The kitchen still smelled faintly of banana muffins, the kind Aunt Rachel always baked when something unpleasant was coming. She'd called that morning asking if I could drop by for a little family talk. But the tension in her voice made it clear this wasn't going to be a cozy catch-up. I sat at the old farmhouse table in her Boise kitchen, where I'd once built Lego cities and studied for SATs. Now, apparently, I was being served a formal intervention by the Caldwell family. My Uncle Dennis sat across from me, arms folded, wearing his off-duty lawyer's sweater, the one he used to look approachable while making closing arguments. My cousin Tyler, ever punctual, was on his phone, glancing at his Apple Watch as though bored already. Next to him, my cousin Rachel Jr. scrolled through her phone with dramatic sighs, her French tips tapping on the ceramic mug like a countdown. "Evelyn," Uncle Dennis began, using my full name as if this were a courtroom deposition. "We're concerned." Blinked. "About what?" "Your direction?" Aunt Rachel chimed in, stacking dishes that didn't need stacking. "It's been 5 years since you finished at UW, and you're still living in that little loft downtown doing what, exactly?" "Systems architecture," I said calmly. Tyler scoffed. "So like IT?" "Like cybersecurity infrastructure for fintech firms," I replied. Rachel Jr. raised an eyebrow. "But are you even on LinkedIn?" I bit back a laugh. "I'm not really looking for work." That was true. I ran a consultancy under my own name with 3 full-time contractors and clients in 4 countries. But none of them had ever asked. They just saw what they wanted to see. Me in jeans and hoodies, working odd hours, no office. Must be floundering. "Sweetheart," Uncle Dennis said, steepling his fingers. "We've let you have your time. But this freelance tech gig doesn't look stable. It's not a real path forward." Aunt Rachel nodded solemnly. "People ask us what you're doing. It's hard to explain." "Tyler has his MBA and manages 2 branches," she continued. "Rachel's up for promotion at the hospital, and you?" "Run a 7-figure firm," I said flatly. Silence. "I've clients in Singapore, London, and San Francisco. I built proprietary security tools used by 3 Fortune 100 companies. I didn't mention it before because you never asked." Uncle Dennis stared. Aunt Rachel looked pale. Then he slowly pulled a manila folder toward him. "Well," he muttered, "we still think it's time for some structure. Tough love, if you will." I smiled. "You're 5 years too late." Here it comes. I'd seen it coming for months, ever since they started dropping little comments at dinners and sending unsolicited job listings to my inbox. Their judgment had been simmering, and now it was boiling over. What they didn't realize was that I'd been preparing for this exact moment for years. "We're cutting off your allowance," Aunt Rachel said at last, drying her hands on a dish towel, like she'd just finished a courtroom cross-examination. "No more monthly transfers. No more backup fund. It's time you understood what living in the real world means." I blinked. "My allowance?" Tyler smirked. "The $800, 0 cents a month, Uncle Dennis has been sending you." That was news to me. I hadn't touched a dollar of Caldwell family money since sophomore year of college, when I bought my first secondhand server and launched a blockchain analytics tool out of my dorm. But apparently, they thought I'd been living off handouts all this time. "We've also arranged an opportunity for you," Uncle Dennis said, sliding a brochure across the table. "Caldwell and Shaw Investments. Tyler is willing to bring you in as a junior analyst." "How generous," I said, careful to keep my voice neutral. "It is generous," Rachel Jr. snapped. "He's risking his credibility for you. You could at least try to appreciate it." Tyler gave a humble nod, clearly enjoying his brief moment of superiority. His firm, barely 2 years old and propped up by family referrals, had fewer than 15 clients, and according to a few SEC filings I'd reviewed for fun, was already under pressure to cut costs. "Of course," Uncle Dennis continued, "this would mean giving up that tech freelancing and committing to a proper career. No more late nights glued to a laptop, no more hiding behind vague job titles. Time to grow up, Evelyn." Aunt Rachel sat down across from me, reaching out like this was a moment of love. "We're not trying to hurt you, sweetheart. We just can't pretend anymore that your little tech experiments are a future." My little tech experiments. The ones that had turned that $500 0 cents of Bitcoin into a private firm with 5 patents, partnerships with 3 banks, and a valuation nearing 8 figures. But sure, let's talk about real careers. So? Uncle Dennis said, satisfied, like he'd delivered the winning argument. What's it going to be? Ready to join the real world, or are you determined to sink or swim alone? I looked around at their expectant faces. Tyler checking his watch, Rachel Jr. snapping selfies, Aunt Rachel with her well-practiced concern, Uncle Dennis leaning back like a judge awaiting a guilty plea. I smiled. Swim. Before I answer, I said calmly, "Can I ask, why now? What's brought all this on?" Rachel Jr. let out a dramatic sigh. "Because we're tired of covering for you. Last weekend at the Macmillan Foundation Gala, everyone was going around bragging about their kids' careers. I had to pretend I didn't even know what you do for work," she added, exasperated. "And the Grangers keep asking when you're going to meet a nice man and settle down," Aunt Rachel chimed in. "You can't attract a suitable husband without a stable job." Tyler leaned forward, folding his hands like he was about to deliver a quarterly report. "Look, Evie, Dad asked me to keep an eye on your finances, just to make sure you weren't heading into dangerous territory." Now that was interesting. The account they'd been monitoring contained exactly $1,247 0 cents. Funds I hadn't touched in years, just a few deposits from Uncle Dennis's forgotten monthly transfers. My actual money? That was in LLC-managed accounts, crypto cold storage, and a diverse portfolio of digital assets, none of which Tyler had the slightest clue about. "Your spending pattern is concerning," he continued with the same faux serious tone he used on his investment podcast. "Rent, groceries, utilities. You're clearly just scraping by on Dad's support." He almost laughed. "The rent was for a penthouse I bought outright last year. Top floor, downtown Boise, with a coated elevator and mountain views. The utilities? Mostly from the server room I'd built out in the basement for my AI testing rigs and blockchain nodes. And the grocery bills? Well, I liked cooking, sue me." "We're worried about you," Uncle Dennis said, voice tinged with that well-practiced concern attorneys use on juries. "You're 27, with no savings, no job title, no future. We can't keep enabling this fantasy." Aunt Rachel nodded sharply. "It ends today." I let the silence stretch before slowly pulling my phone from my back pocket. "I understand your concerns." Just then, right on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Patricia Morrison. Of course, Saturday morning, like clockwork. Patricia was my accountant, one of the top financial strategists on the West Coast, managing high net worth clients with portfolios spanning multiple continents. She always called me with quarterly updates, and today's timing couldn't have been more perfect. "I'm sorry," I said, rising from the table. "I need to take this. It's about my taxes." Uncle Dennis waved a hand. "Fine, make it quick. We're not done here." I smiled faintly and tapped speakerphone. "Good morning, Patricia." "Good morning, Miss Caldwell," came her polished voice, echoing through the kitchen. "I hope I'm not catching you too early. I just wanted to confirm the transfer of $2,300,000 0 cents into your primary investment account. I have your quarterly portfolio summary ready," Patricia continued, "and I wanted to touch on a few tax optimization strategies before next week's filing deadline." In the kitchen, heads tilted. Tyler raised an eyebrow, still assuming this was some side hustle deposit or a small crypto win. Rachel Jr. rolled her eyes. "Of course," I said evenly. "What are the current numbers?" "Well," Patricia began, "your cryptocurrency portfolio has done exceptionally well this quarter. Thanks to the surge in Ethereum and the continued performance of your token diversification, your total crypto holdings are now valued at $4,200,000,000 0 cents. The room fell into absolute silence. Uncle Dennis's coffee cup hovered mid-air. Aunt Rachel's hands clenched around a dish towel like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Tyler froze, eyes wide, while Rachel Jr.'s lip-glossed mouth dropped open without a word. Patricia continued, completely unaware of the grenade she'd just lobbed. Your commercial real estate portfolio is now estimated at $1,800,000,000, primarily driven by appreciation in your Pacific Northwest tech hubs, and your equity investments have climbed to $2,300,000,000, mostly from the surge in green infrastructure stocks and your early open quantum stake. Altogether, your net worth sits at approximately $8,700,000,000. I glanced around. No one moved. No one spoke. It was like the kitchen had stopped breathing. "Miss Caldwell," Patricia said gently. "Are you still there?" "Yes, Patricia. I'm here. Just reviewing the numbers with my family." "Ah, wonderful. I trust they're pleased. Very few people your age have built such a diversified and high-performing portfolio. Your early crypto strategy, combined with your acquisitions and your holdings in emerging tech, have positioned you as one of our youngest billionaires." Tyler coughed hard. Aunt Rachel sat down slowly. Uncle Dennis looked like he was trying to do long division in his head, and failing. "We will need to restructure several of your Cayman entities," Patricia continued, perfectly calm, "and set up 2 new offshore trusts for the Q4 initiatives. I've already booked appointments with your legal team for Monday. Will that work with your schedule?" "That should be fine," I said, watching their faces morph from disbelief to something bordering on terror. "Excellent, and congratulations again on closing the Addison District acquisition. Owning the entire Riverside commercial zone at 27 is an incredible feat." I nodded. "Thank you." That was the building where Caldwell and Shaw leased their modest 900-square-foot office. Tyler had complained about the rent last month. "Have a lovely weekend, Miss Caldwell. Give my best to the family." I ended the call, placed the phone gently on the table, and looked up. No one had anything to say, not anymore. The silence that followed was so deep I could hear the kitchen clock ticking, the hum of the refrigerator, and what might have been the sound of Tyler's ego quietly collapsing in on itself. $8.7 billion, Aunt Rachel finally whispered. "In US dollars," I confirmed calmly. Uncle Dennis set down his mug with a soft clink. His hand trembled slightly. "Evelyn, I don't understand." I looked at each of them, these people who had spent the last 3 years serving me unsolicited advice, judgmental glances, and pitying sighs. They'd assumed I was drifting, lost. They had no idea I'd been building something none of them could even fathom. "What exactly don't you understand?" I asked. "The money?" Uncle Dennis muttered. "How is that even? You work on computers in your apartment." "In my penthouse," I corrected gently. "The penthouse I own, in a building I also own, paid for with investments I started making at 19. Rachel Jr. finally found her voice. "But you drive what is it, that little Honda?" "A 2019 Civic," I said. "Reliable, fuel efficient. I also own a Tesla, a BMW i8, and a vintage 76 Porsche 911. I just don't use them much. I work from home." Tyler stared like I'd just pulled off a mask to reveal someone else entirely. "But your bank account, the one I'd been watching, it had like $1,200, 0 cents in it." "That's an old account I haven't used since college." "You've been monitoring exactly one of my 37 accounts. I have holdings spread across domestic and international institutions, crypto wallets, trusts, and private equity portfolios." You heard Patricia's numbers. I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, and took a slow sip. I needed the moment, and frankly, so did they. "But you live so simply," Aunt Rachel said, her voice thin. "I live efficiently," I replied, returning to my chair. "When you can afford anything, you realize how little you actually need. Wealth doesn't impress me, impact does." Uncle Dennis was shaking his head. "The freelance projects, the odd hours." "I still take some freelance contracts," I said. "Not for income, for challenge. Last month I optimized a logistics AI for a startup in Portland. Before that, I consulted on a blockchain identity system for a financial consortium." "You're a consultant?" Rachel Jr. asked weakly. "Among other things," I said. "I'm also an investor, property owner, crypto trader, And apparently, according to Forbes' early research for their upcoming Young Titans list, a stealth billionaire. Tyler's jaw clenched. Forbes? He finally managed. Yeah, I said, smiling slightly. You'll see the issue next quarter. Cover story, I hear? If you felt that moment of silence hit just right, wait until you see what Evelyn does next. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter in her quiet rise to power. They've been trying to interview me for 6 months now, I said, my voice calm. I've declined because I value my privacy. But after today, I shrugged, pulling out my phone again. Maybe it's time to stop hiding what I've built. I scrolled to Sarah Kim's name. Forbes senior writer. Persistent, polite, and very interested in profiling tech's most elusive rising star. In fact, maybe I'll call her back. No, Uncle Dennis said quickly, his voice cracking. Just wait. I paused, finger hovering above the contact. Help me understand, he said. If you've built all this, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? I set the phone on the table and looked directly at him. When was the last time you asked me what I actually did, Uncle Dennis? Not mocked it, not brushed it off, just asked. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. When did any of you show real interest in my work? You all saw what you wanted to see, and when I tried to explain, you called it a phase, or a hobby, or a waste of time. I turned to Tyler. Remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? I told you I was building a crypto-backed lending protocol. You laughed and said I should get a grown-up job. Tyler looked away. And Rachel, I said quietly, at your birthday brunch last spring, I mentioned I was buying a block of commercial properties. You smiled and said I should worry more about dating before I hit 30. She stared down at the table. So I stopped trying. I let you believe whatever version of me made you feel comfortable. Meanwhile, I built something I'm proud of. Aunt Rachel's eyes welled with tears. But we're your family. No, I said gently. But you've loved a version of me that never existed. The one who needed saving, who needed pushing, not the one I really am. I stood, walked over to the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. Would you like to see what I actually do? Before anyone could answer, I pulled up my dashboard. The room filled with live feeds. Cryptocurrency price trackers, rental income reports, equity growth charts, offshore trust balances, real-time trading logs. This is my morning routine, I said, clicking through the tabs. I check the Asian markets, review overnight blockchain traffic, greenlight real estate acquisitions, decline funding requests, approve multi-million-dollar venture partnerships, and manage my teams. The numbers on screen were surreal. Daily gains that exceeded most salaries, automated rent streams funding entire school districts, and portfolios that ticked upward by the minute. My computer hobby involves managing assets that outsize most Fortune 500 companies, I continued calmly. And that freelance work you've all been mocking, it includes consulting for global corporations on tech infrastructure, blockchain scalability, and cybersecurity strategy. My lifestyle, I added, is intentional. I choose simplicity so I can focus on building wealth, not flashing it. Uncle Dennis leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking years older than when I walked in. Evelyn, I don't even know what to say. You could start with, I'm sorry, I offered. Sorry for assuming the worst, for trying to intervene in a life you never asked to understand, for deciding I was lost without ever hearing where I was going. The room fell quiet again. Outside, I could hear a neighbor's sprinkler sputtering to life and the distant hum of a lawnmower. Normal sounds of a Saturday morning. Inside this kitchen, though, everything had changed. 8.7 billion, Tyler murmured, like repeating it might make it less real. Give or take, I said with a shrug. Depends on how the crypto closes today. And you own our office building? He asked. Yes. Along with the better part of the downtown commercial district, I confirmed. It's been a solid long-term investment. Rachel Jr. finally looked up. Evie, we had no idea. I know, I said gently. That's kind of the point. I closed my laptop and settled back into my chair. Now, about this little intervention. You were planning to cut me off and force me to work under Tyler, correct? Uncle Dennis gave a stiff nod, regret in his eyes. I think we'll need to reevaluate. Good, I replied, because I have a counterproposal. Tyler frowned. What? Instead of me working for you, Tyler, how about you come work for me? He blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? Caldwell and Shaw's bleeding cash, 12 clients, revenue flat, overhead rising. You're paying $8,000 a month for that small suite in my building, and the growth just isn't there. I pulled out my phone and tapped into a file I'd put together months ago, just in case. I've been following your firm's public filings. You're strong on client retention and compliance, but you lack tech leverage and real capital flexibility. Tyler stared. How do you even know about our clients? I do my due diligence, I said, turning the screen toward him. I understand every business operating in my properties. It's not spying, it's called responsible investment management. He looked stunned as I scrolled through projections, retention data, and flagged red zones. But you're not a lost cause, I added. You've got potential. What you need is the right partner. You don't need a miracle, I said. You need better infrastructure and access to real capital. Tyler looked at me warily. So, what are you proposing? A partnership, I replied. I supply the capital, advanced technology, and access to institutional-grade investment vehicles. You bring the client relationships and advisory skills. I turned my laptop toward him again. We rebrand as Caldwell Morrison Financial. You stay on as managing partner for the advisory division. Tyler stared at the proposal on screen like it was written in another language. You'd do this? After everything we said to you today? You're my cousin, I said simply. You made assumptions, but you're not cruel. You're just limited by your own experience. That's something we can change. Then I turned to Rachel Jr. As for you, Belmont Industries is a solid company, but their digital marketing strategy is stuck in 2015. I've been exploring a strategic stake. Her eyes widened. You want to buy part of Belmont? I want to invest in its potential, I clarified. And I want you to lead their digital transformation, step into a bigger role, Chief Digital Strategy Officer, better title, better pay, and equity in the company you help elevate. She blinked, stunned. Finally, I looked at Aunt Rachel and Uncle Dennis. I don't need your support or approval to succeed. I haven't needed that for a long time, but I would like your understanding. Not for the version of me you imagine, but for who I actually am. Aunt Rachel's tears spilled over. Evelyn, we're so sorry, we truly had no idea. I know, I said gently, but now you do. The real question is, what will you do with it? Uncle Dennis cleared his throat. What do you need from us? Respect, I answered. Acknowledgement that I know what I'm doing, trust in my decisions, even when they don't make sense to you. And maybe a little curiosity instead of judgment. Can you forgive us? Aunt Rachel asked quietly. I smiled, soft and steady, just like the one I inherited from her. There's nothing to forgive. You acted on what you thought you knew. Now you know more. What matters is how you move forward. Tyler looked up from the screen, speechless. Evelyn, this proposal, it's incredibly generous. Why would you offer us this? After everything? I looked around the kitchen, at the family I had once believed would never see me clearly. Because that's what families should do, I said. Real family supports one another's success, even when it looks different from what they imagined, I said, as I stood and walked to the kitchen window. I stared out at the street I'd grown up on, the trees I used to climb, the driveway where I'd once built cardboard rocket ships. Building wealth is only meaningful, I added, if I can use it to create opportunity for people I care about. Jennifer joined me quietly, standing shoulder to shoulder. I feel like we don't even know you. You do know me, I said, glancing over. You just didn't know what I was capable of. There's a difference. She nodded slowly. Will you teach us about investing, business, all of it? I turned and looked back at the kitchen table. The same table that once held birthday cakes, school projects, and Sunday morning pancakes. Today it held term sheets, strategy decks, and billion-dollar projections. "I'll teach you everything," I said, "but on one condition." "Anything," Uncle Dennis said quickly. "No more assumptions. If you have questions about my life or my work, ask. If you don't understand what I'm doing, say so. Don't default to thinking I'm wrong." "Deal," they all said at once. I returned to my seat, reopened my laptop, and smiled. And let's start with cryptocurrency 101, because if we're going to be business partners, you need to understand how I built this empire. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through blockchain fundamentals, digital asset valuation, token utility, and long-term growth strategies. I simplified smart contracts and explained decentralized finance like I was teaching a masterclass. Tyler scribbled notes like a grad student. Rachel Jr. asked sharp questions about volatility cycles. Aunt Rachel and Uncle Dennis listened with a level of attention they'd never given my work before. By late afternoon, we'd outlined a preliminary family enterprise structure, each of us contributing in different ways, under a single vision, one that valued innovation, trust, and accountability. Before we wrapped up, I looked at them and said, "One more thing. I'm accepting that Forbes interview." They exchanged glances. "When they ask about my family," I continued, "I'm going to tell them how you supported me, how you believed in my vision, even when it didn't make sense to you." Tyler looked unsure, "But we didn't support you. Not until today." "Exactly," I said. "Today you tried to shut me down. Tomorrow you're going to start lifting me up. And by the time that article goes live, it won't just be a story, it'll be the truth." That evening, I sat in my penthouse, yes, the actual apartment I owned outright, watching the sun dip below the Boise skyline. My phone buzzed. From Tyler. "Reviewed the partnership terms. This is incredible. When do we start?" From Rachel. "Talked to my CEO about the digital strategy role. He's very interested in a meeting." From Tyler. "I've been reading DeFi white papers for hours. My brain hurts, but I'm finally starting to get it. Thank you for your patience." From Aunt Rachel. "Honey, we're so proud of you. We should have seen this sooner." I smiled, setting my phone aside and gazing out at the Boise skyline. Below me, the lights of downtown flickered on one by one, many of them inside buildings I owned, companies I funded, spaces I quietly shaped from behind the scenes. The intervention they had planned to save me from failure had done something very different. It forced them to confront their own definition of failure, and more importantly, to finally see mine for what it truly was. Success, on my terms. My phone rang. Sarah Kim Forbes. "Miss Caldwell," she said as I answered. "Word around the financial world is that you might finally be ready for that interview." I settled into my favorite chair, the one with a view stretching from the foothills to the skyline. "Yes," I said, "I think it's time to tell my story." Our readers are fascinated by entrepreneurs who create wealth through unconventional paths. What's the biggest lesson you've learned? I thought back to the kitchen table conversation, the years of quiet judgment over dinners, of being misunderstood while I quietly built an empire. Success isn't about meeting other people's expectations, I said. It's about exceeding your own. And sometimes, the greatest risk isn't failing out loud. It's succeeding in silence, while everyone assumes you're failing. "That's powerful," Sarah replied. "Can you elaborate?" I looked out over the city again, thinking of my family, of how they'd spent years trying to rescue me from a version of my life that never even existed. "Sometimes," I said, "the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building something so extraordinary, so undeniable, that their opinions stop mattering altogether." And as I dove into a long conversation about blockchain, strategic scaling, and the psychology of stealth wealth, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. The life they thought I needed saving from, it was never real. The life I had built, that was just beginning. 3 months later, the Forbes article hit shelves. The 27-year-old who built a $9 billion zero-cents empire while her family planned an intervention. By then, Caldwell Morrison Financial had doubled its client base, Rachel was leading Belmont's most successful digital evolution. Aunt Rachel and Uncle Dennis had become surprisingly savvy investors. And the kitchen table? It now hosted weekly meetings, investment reviews, startup pitches, and champagne toasts. Every Saturday morning, when Patricia called with my portfolio update, I still put her on speaker. Some habits are worth keeping. If my story hit home for you, if you've ever been underestimated, doubted, or told your path wasn't real, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part resonated most. Your support means more than you know. Subscribe if you believe quiet success deserves to be seen. Here's my advice. Don't waste energy proving yourself to people who only see what they expect. Build in silence if you have to. Let your results speak. Trust your vision, even when no one else does. You don't need validation to be valuable. You just need the courage to keep building.